1965 in March, Baird gave his first public demonstration of television. It wasn't actually true television because at that time he could only pick up reflected light. What he needed to do really to be a true definition of television is you had to have 50 shades of grey in it, but this was basically just black and white. But that came down to getting the contrast was down really to the gain in the photocell, because he used selenium to start with and that was very slow, you couldn't get much definition. So he came up with this idea here. You've got a double spiral of 8 lenses. The idea of having a double spiral is you could run the disc at half the speed, because if you run the disc too slow you get flicker. If you run it too fast you've got to watch the centrifugal force, because these lenses weigh about 70 grams. If it goes at 200 RPM, the force on there is about half a kilogram. If you run it at 1,500, it's 10 kilograms is needed to hold these lenses in place. And Baird, when he first started off, was using discs sort of several feet in diameter, and lenses, glass lenses, about 5 inches diameter. And he said, you know, those were exciting times. He said suddenly a lens would fly off and ricochet around the room. So anyway, he came down with this idea here. And it's a little bit different because you've got the image here, it goes through the lenses, and the image, you've got the photocell in that little slot there. The image actually moves across the slot. And the optics get a bit, well, basically simple, but the principle is slightly different. On this side, you would have had a Baird neon, and then you've got the same arrangement, geometrical arrangement of 2 spirals of slots. Now, where the controversy comes in, a lot of professors and a lot of people have written to say that there was also an interlacing disc that would divide each of these slots up into 4, so you'd end up with 32 lines. And about 4 years ago, Don McLean, who was writing an article on the 88, wanted to know how it worked. So I came up with, I thought was the right explanation for how it all worked. And it's the only time I've had a reference in his book to say Peter Smith said this is the way it worked, and I thought, by sod's law, it probably isn't. So I thought I'd better try and prove it. Another member of the MBTVA was interested as well. But the problem we had, we didn't have many photos of it. We had this photo, which is taken in Selfridges, when he was giving his public demonstration. But to try and work out from the photographs the sizes of everything, what the diameter of the disc was and everything else, and I know Vic was trying to put it into Photoshop to get it all to square up and everything. Anyway, we came to various things and decided that the disc was probably 2 foot in diameter, and the discs were about 2 inches. And Vic also had a guess too and worked out that probably the focal length of the lens needed to be 150 millimeters. And funny enough, when I was looking through another article where somebody published a lot of the letters between Baird and somebody else in the company, they'd actually ordered lenses 2 inches diameter with a focal length of 150 millimeters. We couldn't believe our luck because we'd actually chosen the right ones. So basically, if we power this up, you can see that what they had achieved was, I don't know whether you can see in there, if I turn this round, is that better? Can you see in the mirror?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. You just moved it slightly too much.
Yeah, back a bit.
Let's
get there. Yes.
Okay. Yes, you can see the image of the 8 there. And in fact, what I think is more impressive is that you can actually see, if I put my, oh, the lights move around, that's why we're not getting,
Oh, yeah.
I can't see what I'm doing, but you can see, you can see your fingers move, you know. Yes, incidentally, this is upside down as well. But I didn't know what to turn upside down to get it right. But yeah, I've moved that back again, so I don't know whether how's that for an image. I can't see myself now, whether it's turned up or not.
Yeah, that's fine, right in the middle.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Well, then the thing came about these various people had written that Baird was demonstrating 32 lines, you see. And we came to the conclusion that none of the photos showed the interlacing disc. And if I come round here, I can show you, see, because people said, oh yes, if you look at that photo there, you can see those spirals. So they said what we needed is another disc that fitted behind this disc over here that would actually take each slot and divide it up into 4. And there's people written the articles and said, oh yes, what you need is a disc like this. So I made a disc like that, and you have this disc here that would run at half the speed, so you'd have a chain drive between there and the shaft that was sitting over there, so that this would then divide, because you need it to run at half speed because you've got 2 spirals of lenses. And on this, where you've got the camera here, you'd have just a simple spiral which would go around and scan across that slot. That slot is about 10 millimetres across the photocell behind. This would scan it, so you'd be moving the scanning point across. But it gets a bit more complicated, because normally if you think of interlacing, you think probably you've got the lines virtually successive across. I mean, if it's on, 405, you'd have 2 scans, odd and even lines. Well, it jumps from line 1 to line 8, to line 5 to line 9, and across like that. Well, I put that disc in, set it all up, and it didn't work. The picture was a real mess. Plus the fact, the flicker was so awful because it took 4 revolutions of that disc basically to generate one complete frame. The only way I could see that the image there was at all was to take a long exposure photograph on it. Anyway, there was all this discussion about what the disc should look like, and I ended up with various things. I thought, well, the only way to do it is to, because various people have tried to calculate what this interlacing disc should look like. So what I did, I put a blank disc on the shaft behind here, and I actually went through step by step and marked on this disc each of the lines that I thought I'd need. And I managed to find a white pencil, an old crayon, cut it so that it was basically 2.5 millimetres wide, which is the width that these slots have to be, and just go round, this disc going round twice, just marking each one. So I ended up cutting up this disc. And the first one I made was a small one, but what happened is, you can see that the lines get close together, so you get, instead of just getting 32 lines like that, you get lines coming in all sorts of angles, and it's a real dog's breakfast. So I then decided that I needed to make a bigger disc, and the biggest disc I could put on with this arrangement was that one, because it sits there, and you can see that they even crowd in towards the bottom end. But I did actually get a photograph of it, but the accuracy it had to be I mean, I was using chain drive. Well, I used a plastic chain from one of the kids' toy boxes from many years ago, and I found it wasn't accurate enough because the other thing, you see, there's no chain drives in any of these photos either, because you'd have to have a crown wheel, you know, a wheel probably 8 inches diameter, and another one 4 inches diameter. And there's no indication of these on here anywhere at all. So, and if we come to work out the accuracy, I then replaced, because I thought, well, there's inaccuracy in the chain, I got some, you know, new chains which were pretty well made, and I found that 0.1 of a millimetre play in the chain shifted the lines by 1 line. And you think, well, how the hell did Baird do that? So I think really, Baird got as far probably as actually doing this, and then realised, you know, it would be so difficult to do. And he was making things, you know, he didn't have a decent workshop, things were sort of cobbled together. He probably decided that it was the wrong way to do it. And as I say, there's various reports that I found that various organisations that come and viewed it, and what they describe is the fact that you could see a person's hand and you could see the fingers opening and closing. He actually had a cutout of a man with a top hat with 2 eyes, and he could put his hand across the eye and make the eye blink. And as all this was reported, I thought, well, I'm darn sure he only demonstrated 8 lines. But funny enough, Professor Waddell got to hear of my sort of exploits on this, you see, and he's written a book. And in that he said, Baird used 32 lines. Well, I've now sort of written this article, which will be published in the MBTBA, and as far as I can see, I can find no proof that any bits and pieces existed that he would have needed to actually generate 32 lines. And really, when I look at one of the patents, he just had two discs with 32 lenses with a single spiral on each, and had the receiver disc didn't have this complicated interlacing disc, because he just had 32 lenses, so that the transmitting disc and the receiving disc were identical. And then he could run with 32 lines in the spiral, he could run it at a slower speed, and he wouldn't get the problem with any more of the flicker. So in fact, I was lucky in a way. My daughter works for a company where one of her jobs is searching through patents. And I chatted her up, and she searched through about 100 patents of Baird and find no indication of a disc like this that would be needed to give the 32-line interpolation. So that really sort of, that's my project that has taken me. Well, I suppose I started it in the sort of October, November time. And the other thing that prompted me many years ago, when I was making a replica of a Baird televisor, I advertised in RADCOM for various components. And a chap in South Wales said, oh yes, I've got a Baird motor, you see. So the wife and I thought, great, we can, you know, go and spend a week in Wales, do some walking and go and see this guy. And when I got down there, he came out with this motor, and it was this sock engraved thing here, you see, which is a lot bigger than the Baird motor. And I said to him, well, that's not a Baird motor. And he said, well, it's the same as the one in Selfridges, in the photograph, Baird's apparatus in Selfridges. So I thought, well, I've come all this way, I can't disappoint him, I'll buy this. It wasn't all that much. I've had it kicking around for about 20 years, and when I realised it looked almost identical to the ones in the original Baird photograph in Selfridges, I thought, I can use that. So that's how it started. It started with that motor, and it expanded across to the contraption that you see there now. So I don't know whether, you know, that covers what you'd expected to see today. But
Question being, effectively you've got frame synchronization because you've got both receiving and transmitting discs driven off the same axle.
yes,
If they were separate, did Baird come up with any kind of frame synchronization, or was it a manual adjustment?
no, what he did actually, in some of these photos you can see, for Selfridges, he had it all on one shaft. But what he also did, he had a chain drive down to an alternator on the transmitting disc, and he had a similar synchronous motor, chain driven, on the receiving disc. And he'd have motors on each to drive them roughly the right speed, and he'd use the small input from the alternators to synchronize, to just pull it into frequency. And it's the way that the Baird televisor that he mass produced in 1930, it's the same idea. It had a synchronizing cog on the shaft and relied on the content of the picture. He actually had the picture content to make sure there was a black synchronizing period at the bottom. And when you amplified this up and put it through the coils, because the coil was roughly tuned, you get it would integrate the picture waveform into a rough sine wave, and that would be enough to get this, synchronizing on it. But for his early demonstrations, he just put it all on the same shaft. Any questions? No? No?
With all these extra discs, you think this is wishful thinking, and that your experimentation shows that it's not practical for the period.
Yes.
So the guy better fix his book. So someone needs to fix their book, don't they? Some professor.
Well, that's right, yes. He sent me his book, and I mean, his book, Professor Waddell, caused a lot of controversy because he said Baird invented radar, and he says all funny things like that, so it doesn't go down very well. Yes, but as I say, he sent me his book, and he's highlighted all the bits in there that he reckons is right. But as far as I'm concerned, well, practically I don't think he would have demonstrated it like that. But there is no photographic proof that any of these discs existed. And you can look at the photograph of Selfridges, and the apparatus doesn't do that. It's 8 lines.
The other thing is when you call it interlacing, the whole point of interlacing is to increase the frame rate or the build rate to give you the illusion of better motion, not to decrease it, which is what your experiment showed you happen.
Well, yes, you're trying to get better definition, aren't you? Because with this, it's the definition. I mean, 8 lines. If you put anything smaller than an 8, something in like that, you wouldn't get the resolution because, say, you've only got 8 slots to make up the picture. And I think you really find, Baird found later on that 32 line was about right. You could get reasonable images of faces with 32 lines. And the other thing in those days, he had to use a neon lamp, which is much dimmer. And then you've got the persistence of vision. I mean, here it would flicker more because I've got a brighter LEDs. And the persistence of vision gets longer the dimmer the light. So if you see, I mean, years ago I've done demonstrations with the Baird televisor and a neon lamp, and really the flicker is very small because, the eye does more of the longer integration of it. So that comes in as well, just to sort of add to the complication.
So the neon stays on. So once energized, it stays on for a long period of time.
No, the neon is flicking on and off.
Oh, but
Fine,
in your
but
eye.
it's in the eye that does the integration. I mean, otherwise you wouldn't be able to watch any television. It'd be awful if there was no integration. No. It was Rayleigh, I think, came up with Rayleigh's law that it varies as the some power of the intensity. So
I think it's a fourth power law.
it's something like that.
It's why the sky is blue.
Yes.
No.
Yes. When I worked out the
It's called Rayleigh scattering.
when I worked out the centrifugal force, I thought this took me back to about 60 years ago, I thought, what formula do you use for, for working this out? And I thought, well, the units I use was pounds and inches and things like this. And I looked on the internet, and I found the formula right, and it's a square law anyway, which I remembered. And I remembered sort of 981 as being the magic constant number that you put in. Anyway, I did the calculations, and when I realised that, it went up sort of 50 times, taking the speed from 200 to 1500 RPM, I gave my calculations to two of my grandchildren and said, can you mark that for me, please? And I got 10 out of 10, which I was quite pleased. Okay, well, as I said, if there was any more questions, it's probably time to have something to drink.
Thank you. Peter, that was absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for bringing that along. Thank you to all our contributors, and hopefully we'll do this fairly soon again. Thank you.